Hello everyone, for the Berklee Blogs, this is Vasconcelos, and I'm here with amazing young artist Michael Lee. He was kind enough to take us in his home and for a quick interview for everyone watching, everyone that's a fan of his work. I'd like to talk a little bit about like a typical day in your life. I know you have so many responsibilities and so many roles you have to fulfill as a bassist, composer, arranger, producer, owner of a label. I mean, the amount of things you do is just unbelievable, and it's a little bit of a, not a little bit, but definitely a reflection of how demanding the music industry is today of the artists. And how would you describe like a typical day in your life right now with juggling all this insane amount of things you have to do?
A typical day, I mean, I guess there is no typical day. That's kind of like the really fun thing about being a freelance musician, is that every day is a completely different experience with a completely different set of people most of the time, or the same set of people for short periods of time, a couple weeks, and then different, you know. Today, I woke up and went to the bank and tried to get stuff together for like basically registering an LLC and getting like a bank account for my production company or my record label. And then I went to a studio session from 11 to 6 with an artist on Verve, whose album I'm co-producing. So we tracked vocals all day with her in Manhattan. And then I came home here and we're doing this. And then after that I'm going to spend a few hours like on Pro Tools preparing sessions for her record and another record, both of which I'm tracking or producing tomorrow. You know, and then Wednesday, I'm going to Virginia with the rest of Snarky Puppy to make 2 albums. One with an African artist and from Burundi, and another one with like 8 different vocal artists, which we'll probably talk about later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, I guess a daily life, a lot of either being on tour. If you're on tour, it's a completely different schedule. If I'm home in New York, it's generally like spent in a recording studio at a venue, playing at night, on Pro Tools, editing, working on production stuff, or a lot of the time kind of staying up in the middle of the night and writing string and horn arrangements or something for different records. But it's a different thing every day, and like you said, musicians have to wear lots of different hats, both musically and administratively. So I just kind of try to do my best to like keep my head above water, especially with communication. Because people are very demanding about that as well. Like, you know, it's if you go 4 hours without responding to a text, people start getting upset. And it's like when I was a kid, you'd go 48 hours without responding to a phone call because you had no cell phones, there were answering machines. So it's like people demand communication very, very quickly, and the speed of music is very, very fast now.
Yeah.
So, you know, the hardest thing for me, to be honest, the biggest challenge is managing my electronic devices between sessions, between musical sessions, whether it's a gig or recording session or a sound check or whatever. You know, it's like the hardest thing for me is to like stay in touch with people, because I like to be in a studio, phone off, 8 hours, focused completely on that, or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely getting back to everyone that needs to get a hold of you.
Yeah.
While at the same time you have to be 100% immersed in the project you currently are involved with.
It's hard. I haven't figured it out yet. If anybody has, you know, send me an email.
Yeah, maybe that's no. Okay.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So as everybody watching this video already knows, he's the band leader, the bassist and the composer for Snarky Puppy, which is an absolute phenomenon. Especially, you know, I mean, everywhere I go, and especially at Berklee, people are like, they're very inspired by the music, and there will be performing a show on March 30th at the BPC, so make sure to check that out. And talking a little bit about the band right now, would you mind telling us a little bit how that band got together and how like the process was of having so many members, such a diverse, such an everything, like a live melting pot of influences and people. And
yeah, well, I mean, I guess the short answer to that question is that I was at the University of North Texas in Denton. And it was like my first year of school or second year of school, and I was writing music that wasn't really jazzy necessarily, and I just got like 9 of my friends together to play it. I thought that guy will be great, that guy will be great, you know, kind of trying to find the right guys. And we, you know, played a gig in a basement of a pizza place, you know, in Denton. And like everybody brought 5 people, so we had like a 50-person crowd. You know, it's easy to get people out to shows when you bring 5 friends and shows packed. So, but yeah, it just started like that, really kind of unassuming without any major ambitions. And we played another gig, and then we made like a little album in a recording studio in like a day and a half. You know, like recorded and mixed in like 2 days. You know, like crazy. And then we went on like a tour. I like booked some gigs from Denton to Washington D.C. where I'm from, Northern Virginia, and we like did that tour. And you know, when you go on tour and you play a gig and the club likes you, they're like, man, you know, loved it, come on back. So yeah, so it's kind of like when you start touring, you kind of can't stop because it's always an investment. It's like a continuing investment. Just like making a record. You know, you make one record, a certain number of people find out about it, then you make another record, and more people find out about it, and it's just like each time you reach more people, you know, persistence is like a major factor in success, I think, for
absolutely
for any, people in any profession, definitely in music. And so so that's kind of how it started, really unassuming, and then it was like one tour led to another, 8 gig tours led to 18 gig tours. Now they're 80 gig tours, you know, I mean, it's just...
they're like hundreds of shows per year.
Yeah.
They're going global.
Yeah, it's been an interesting process, but the really main moment of transition, I think, was after we made our second album. I got kind of really surprisingly kind of tossed into the really incredible gospel and R&B scene in Dallas, Texas. Just by a strange stroke of luck at a jam session, the guy heard me and asked me to play at his church, and the church band was the RH Factor, which where I was. So it was like, I showed up on stage and I was like, I know all of these guys from records, and I had no idea that they lived in Dallas. And then I started playing at that church, so they became my buddies and like my mentors. So I didn't realize there was this whole other scene happening in Dallas, and I was going to these clubs every night, watching these guys play and bringing my guys from the band down, and they were checking it out. And then we all started kind of playing in each other's scenes, the black scene in Dallas and the white scene in Denton. And the scene's really like, you know, for lack of a better word, I guess they integrated, you know. And now when I go back to Texas, it's crazy. Like I see those guys in Dallas playing in Denton, and I see those guys in Denton playing in Dallas. So it's a really cool thing that's happened down there. But that changed the direction of the music for Snarky Puppy. Yeah. It got funkier, it got a little simpler, like a little more like direct and less overly heady and intellectual.
Would you say more accessible?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I mean, these guys taught us how to reach people with less notes, you know, and with feel, like feel, like feel number one. Like don't try to like blow their minds. Just like play stuff that feels good and write stuff that feels good, and that really affected me for sure.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing, because that is definitely like a big trademark of the songs that we hear now. You know, from like I don't know, more like a mature version of the band, so to speak. You know, yeah. Another question that I would have for you is, are you checking do you have time to check any of the current bands that are playing in Brooklyn, in New York? Because then there's such a strong musical scene here as well.
Sure.
Do you have do you know any bands that you think they're great that people should check out, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely, man. My favorite band right now is a band full of Berklee students, ex-Berklee students, called Banda Magda.
Banda Magda?
Yeah, cool. Banda Magda. This girl Magda Yannikou, who's a Greek accordionist and composer and singer, who went to Berklee, and she's got like a group that plays like world music. She writes all her songs in French, but she sings in like 6 different languages. But the musicianship and the vibe that they have on stage, and like it's just really beautifully written. I'm like a composition. I'm like a sucker for composition. That's my. I'm surrounded by musicians who can play all the time. Anywhere you go in New York City, everyone can play. You never see people who can't play. But it's one thing it's another thing to see people who can write, who can create music, and that's my favorite. That's those are my favorite kind of people. So I love that band. Prigs, which is like this kind of indie rock band. It's like 14 guys on stage, like a really funny band to watch.
Nice.
And fun band to watch. Another band called The Netherlands, like a really indie rock, like hardcore, like loud rock band that just I love hearing. I mean, there's a lot of, there's so many great bands around here. I mean, I try to, like, my rule is to go out every night that I'm in New York, because I'm not in New York very much anymore, but when I'm here,
yeah, every time you're here.
Any time that I don't have an immediate responsibility that I have to take care of at home at night, like I said, like a prep for a session, I go out and hear music.
Yeah.
I try,
That's incredible. Would you like to talk a little bit about the next couple recordings for Snarky Puppy and about the process? And I know you're gonna have like vocalists involved, and it's gonna be like yet another layer being added to, to the group.
Yeah. Well, Wednesday we go down to the Jefferson Center in Roanoke, Virginia, which is a performing arts center, and we're going to make an album with a 19-year-old kid from Burundi, Africa, named Bukuru Celesti, he's a refugee. He lived in Tanzania, and then he moved to Roanoke, which actually has a surprisingly large African refugee community. And he enrolled in this program at the Jefferson Center called the Music Lab at Jefferson Center that kind of helps kids in the community have access to musical instruments and Pro Tools, and they can record and write stuff. And it's an incredible place, and we work very closely with them. We try to work with nonprofits and music advocacy groups as often as possible. And Bukuru is just one of the really talented kids there, and we did a track with him and Ari Honig, a jazz drummer, like a weird combination of musicians, but the three kind of teams combined, and we did a track of his, and it was so cool that we were like, man, we've got to make a whole record, and we got a grant from Chamber Music America, from CMA, to make a record. So the band is going down Wednesday. We're going to record 7 of his songs that I rearranged and will be producing. And we're using his sisters, who are like 13, 15, and 17, to sing background vocals. They're incredible. And a full Burundian choir that all happens to be in Roanoke. It's crazy. So it's kind of like the inversion of Graceland. Like Graceland was like, like Paul Simon, white guy, his songs, his lyrics, like African band, and in this case it's the opposite, where it's like
instrumentalists, arrangers are white, their music.
Right, but the music is the music and vocalists are African, so that's going to be really cool. And then we have like 3 days off, and then we're making a record based off of a music series that I started here 2 years ago called Snarky Puppy's Family Dinner.
Yeah.
So we for the last 2 years, like a couple months a year, we play every Friday night at this club, Rockwood Music Hall, at like 1 a.m, free shows, and we invite 3 artists each week to come in and play with us, and we play their music with them. We're like the house band, and we learn their songs, and we don't rehearse, and we just like, I send everybody MP3s of their music, we learn it on our own, and then we show up on stage and we like count off the tunes and play. It's crazy.
It's so amazing.
It's great because there's no expectation for success. It's like failure is totally imminent.
But then you must have some very magical moments too.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is everybody's loose, because it's like, well, there's no pressure to be perfect, so let's listen to each other and have fun. And it's been such a joy, like playing all these people's music, that we were like, man, we got to make a record. And we tried to plan it out, and we tried to make it happen last year. It didn't happen, and finally we got like all the budget together and the facilities, and we're doing it at the Jefferson Center, the same place where we were doing Bukuru's record. And we got like some really heavy artists with us, like Magda, who I just talked about, is doing it. A girl from Montreal named Malika Tyrolian, like people that that people might not have heard of, like that are amazing. And then we've got like a few people who are like sidemen with famous artists, like Shantae Khan, who sings with India Ari, Lucy Woodward, who sings with Rod Stewart, Shayna Steele, who sings with Rihanna. And then we've got like and Dombey and Layla Hathaway. So that's going to be really, really cool. So it's like a really nice combination of artists. Tony Scher, this really incredible like slide guitar Americana player who plays bass for Bill Frisell, and I mean just it's like their artists are all over the map, from French pop to Americana to like real soul.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be cool. We're gonna make a DVD out of it. That's gonna be great. So we're gonna make another live DVD, and then both those records happen in the next 30 days. And then, which is really crazy to think about. And then we go on tour for a long time. And then in October, we're going to Europe for the third time this year. We're going to Europe, and we're going to make a live DVD in Europe of our stuff. Because those two records are not our music.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's going to be like a real Snarky Puppy record, like in October. Another DVD, another live DVD, so. Yeah. A lot on the plate this year, and in between that, I think we're playing like 170 or 180 gigs. So it's like, I know we're gluttons for punishment.
You guys really follow the pace of New York, apparently.
Yeah, right.
As fast as the city does. One thing I would like to do, this is a favor that a friend of mine asked me to give to you, transcriptions of your own playing.
Oh, my playing? That's horrible. Why is he? They're so...
Yeah, because he's such a big fan, man, and he transcribed everything, and he posted like some YouTube covers on,
He should be transcribing James Jamerson or something, man. It's just, wow, that's crazy. I wouldn't even... That's so funny, man.
Well, I'm sure he'll love the reaction.
That's hilarious. Pedro Zappa?
Yes.
That's his name? Zappa?
No, Zappa is just his artist nickname. He's a friend of mine from Berklee too, and he's actually from Portugal. So when he heard that I was going to do this, he was just like, "Oh my God, you gotta take this for this."
This is so funny, man. Dude, he should. Wow, that's insane. I can't believe he'd spent the time. I can't play that.
Well, apparently you can.
I could never play that in my life. This is wrong.
Apparently you can.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. So I'd like to just ask like a couple more questions on the musical.
Sure.
On this vibe. I'd like to ask you about like orchestration in general, like just sitting like here briefly on your room, I can already tell like the diverse amount of instruments you have, and I'm sure they're like very useful tools when it comes to composing, and like that's a really big mark of Snarky Puppy, having all these different instruments, and the way you arrange them are just organic and beautiful, So I would like just want to hear a little bit about how you approach, or do you just like envision them, or do you search for new sounds when you write, or
actually, I don't. I almost never use these instruments to write. I like almost always write on a keyboard or a MIDI keyboard. Mm-hmm. Like most of the time when I write, I'm not at home. Actually, I don't know. I'm not sure if I've ever written a Snarky Puppy song at home. So like I'm generally traveling or something, and I have a MIDI keyboard, and I'll post up in a hotel room with my laptop and GarageBand and a MIDI keyboard, and then I'll write like that. Really
cool.
It's strange, and then all this stuff is just like, for recording or
just
playing live gigs. Yeah,
exactly. That's really cool. How did the Snarky Puppy name came to be? Like, what is the Snarky Puppy? I'm sure you've heard that question. Like,
it's the interview question. It's a really uninteresting story.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody at Berklee can come up with a really interesting story, and they can email it to me.
We'll do that.
And then I'll tell that story as the official story from now on.
That sounds perfect. Well, I'll just spread the rumor. You're now
looking for a story.
You're looking for a better story. Okay, that sounds good. And just to the last question I have for you, what are your 5 favorite albums of all time?
Oh, Jesus.
That's awesome.
Okay, I'll tell you 5 albums that like changed the way that I think about music.
Perfect.
The first one was Abbey Road. That was the first time that I remember, like, as a kid, I was like in 5th grade and I heard it and I was like, I don't even know how to start feeling all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
XTC, record called Apple Venus. Volume 1. My brother gave me that in high school, and it rocked my world. Just their sense of harmony and orchestration, arrangement, melodies, really incredible. Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's an obvious one, but things are obvious for a reason. OK Computer, for sure. Radiohead, I mean, that I heard that in junior high school, and it just blew me away. And I would say, down to the fifth one. It's not fair, man. I would probably say Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy.
How would you explain your approach to playing bass? Like, how would you describe it to somebody if you were to just fit in like just a little frame,
a concept,
like
I guess,
concept, yeah.
Yeah, I think of bass kind of like as a percussionist. Which is why I tend to play like 4-string basses, like flat wounds, like or in this case I'm playing like an old Hofner with tape wounds, or 75% tape wounds. Because it's got kind of like a dead, like rhythmic, percussive,
almost bass drummy kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I like to kind of slip in with the bass drum, and it also makes me play simpler. Like if I have like a lot of strings and a lot of frets, it makes me want to use them, and I'd prefer to not use them. I think I'd sound better the less notes I play.
It's like Bootsy.
Yeah, right. Except for not as good. Yeah, so I mean, but for me, it's all about like you asked about approach. It's generally about like respecting the rhythmic infrastructure of the song, and also respecting what's happening in the song. If there's a singer singing, I'm going to be playing very differently than if there's a saxophone player soloing,
yeah.
Or if it's just me and the drummer. You know what I mean? Like, not just like playing stuff, but like supporting the band and supporting the focus of attention, whether it's a singer, a horn player, guitar player, or me, or the drummer, or whatever. But generally, just like kind of playing around it, like I said, respecting the pulse. Like like in Afro-Cuban music, you have like a clave.
Yeah.
There are specific claves, and all the instruments have to obey those claves. And in our music, like American music, we don't have clave specifically, but we basically do. Every song, kind of, to me, in my own head, I've made this idea that every song has a clave. And there are certain rhythms that you play, and if you play them, they just don't sound good, and certain other ones do. Yeah. So for me, like, I always try to, like, my rule is, if I'm going to play something different than the original groove, my rule is that everyone else has to be able to play the same thing and my groove sound good for that groove to be like correct. Like if somebody has to change what they're playing in order to make my new groove sound good, or what I'm doing sound good, then I'm doing something wrong.
So it's like building blocks, and you think that
exactly. And if I think
build on top of the groove and not the other way around.
Right, and I think if everybody obeys that way, then you can create like a totally different groove with each other, with everybody just making like little minor adjustments.
Yeah.
So like if there's a groove like I don't know. So we've got like a real pattern, right?
Yeah.
The basic pattern beat. That's like the basic groove. Really simple. But I can change little things. it's like
Yeah.
you're never really leaving it. Like if the drummer was playing the same thing the whole time, that would hopefully feel good.
Yeah,
Still.
yeah.
And like I like leaving notes out of a groove, like I did. Like I didn't play the beat one. I mean, to me, if you're surrounded by good musicians, the more you let them play, and the more you let the audience hear them play by not playing, kind of the better everything feels. You know, I learned that from playing with, when I first started playing in Dallas, I was playing with all these drummers that were just way better than me. Just way better musicians than me, and I realized, like, I sounded better playing than I did playing, you know. You know, it's like no, I'm just gonna play beat one, and they're gonna sound amazing, and I'm gonna have more fun because then the band sounds good, rather than when I like try to play all my stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Amazing. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing for improvising too. Like, in terms of soloing, like I like to feel the groove. I like to feel like the solo is almost like an extension of the groove or a conversation with the groove. So if we were doing that. So it doesn't feel like, I try to make it feel like we never left.
Yeah.
Like when you go back into the groove, it's not like, you know, sometimes people take solos and you can tell that like they just have this preconceived idea of what they're gonna do. They're waiting the whole song, like when I get to my solo, I'm gonna turn on the phaser and turn on the octave, you know, and rather than it being like a natural extension.
Something that yeah, I understand. So it would be like the same approach soloing in different tunes, right?
Right,
You're not
exactly.
soloing over the tune.
Exactly.
You're just doing your own thing that you always do. On top
Right.
Of every song.
And the way I learned that was from doing that, from playing 4-hour jazz gigs and playing the same solo on every song. You know, I mean, not literally the same solo, but like the same kind of like
totally understand.
not letting the song or the groove inform my solo. Like just like playing, like looking at his chord changes. Like C major 7, C minor 7 half 7 to B flat major 7. Like, and just like playing chord changes instead of playing the song. Like there's a melody that needs to be respected. There's a groove that needs to be respected. Yeah. So it was just from like, to me it's like, you know, any time that I've gotten better as a musician or grown, it's from like experiencing other musicians who were way better than me and just generally like getting sick of sounding bad. You know what I mean?
God,
like
so awesome.
Well, no, I mean, you know, you get tired of sounding bad. Like, you know, I play the same thing over and over night after night, or like I keep playing a groove and it's not funky, and you're just like, man, I'm sick of not being funky. I have to fix this. You know, so you figure out a way to fix it. Generally, that comes from playing with and going to see great musicians play. I don't think there's any substitute for that. So, I mean, as far as approach, I guess for me, it's like respecting your musical environment and knowing your role. You know, I'm a bass player, so I like to play bass. I'm not like trying to, you know. Snarky Puppy's a little different because, you know, it's all about like crazy sounds sometimes. And I step out of a bass player role from time to time, but someone else picks it up, like a keyboard player will be playing Moog while I'm soloing, or, you know, we pass it around. There's no rules, but that's generally like the rule I like to start with before I break it.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, man, for sure. My pleasure, man. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks, everyone. Yep.
Okay.